Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It is your girl, Marcy Thomas, here with you for another episode of Live Well, Sister. So come on in the room, as we like to say around here, and let's get ready for what's going to be a great conversation that's all about possibilities. Aren't we always looking for more possibilities? I know I am. Earlier today, I shared that my mantra for today is I'm possible, not impossible, but I'm possible. And our special guest for the evening is really going to help us talk about that. So I am coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and a bunch of other places in between. So if you want to drop a note and let us know where you're joining us from, if this is your first time, if you've been here a lot of times, we just love to know who's in the room. And just to tell you up front, we look forward to having you engage in this conversation with us. So it's not just the two of us, but it's a whole bunch of us coming together collectively to have a great conversation. So tonight's special guest has written this beautiful book, The Book of Possibilities, Words of Wisdom on the Road to Becoming. And that special guest is Bee Quammie. Now, she is a writer, radio host, television personality, and public speaker. She was the co-host of the Cultured podcast on Global News Radio and is a regular guest on The Social. Her writing has been featured in publications including The Globe and Mail, Maclean's, Chatelaine, Ebony, Flair, and Hazlitt, among others, covering topics ranging from race and culture to parenthood, health, and wellness. She is a bold, brilliant, and beautiful Jamaican Canadian who lives in Greater Toronto with her two daughters. And without any further delay, let's welcome Bee Quammie to Live Well, Sister. Hey, Bee.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. This is amazing.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, and you told me you got your vacation hair, so you're looking good.
Exactly. Listen, this vacation hair, the appointment was made. I was like, listen, let me make sure I look good for Marcy.
Yes.
Look good for the vacation, so we doing it.
Yes, you are looking beautiful. Beautiful.
As are you.
Thank you. So thank you so much for being here. As I said to you earlier, immediately when I saw this book, I knew that I had to talk to you because just thinking about possibilities and what it means to think, as I said earlier, about what's possible versus what's impossible.
Exactly.
So I think that's really powerful. So you have, before we get into the book, I want to talk a little bit about just your story because, I mentioned some of the things that you're doing in the here and now, but you have a life where you have often looked at what was possible. So just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to be the glorious person that you are today.
Yes. So listen, this is a very interesting and winding road of a story that has brought me here. But as a kid, I always loved to write. Writing was the thing that, if I had any spare time after I was done my homework, done my chores, I just wanted to write. I just wanted a little journal, a little notebook, a little scrap of paper and a pen, and I was happy. And when I was in elementary school, I won a writing competition. So they picked one winner per grade. And we got to have lunch with Robert Munch, who was my favorite children's book author, still is. But as a kid, to sit with one of your heroes and have them say to you, you're a really good writer, because he read the story that I wrote. And I thought at age 7 or 8, I was like, okay, my favorite author told me I'm a writer. My life is set.
Right.
I like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. But, with my parents who had come to Canada from Jamaica, and were looking at how do you have stability, how do you have security, and how do you make sure you can take care of yourself. They didn't really see writing as a job. I didn't see writing as a job. So I was like, okay, well, I guess that's just a fun thing I can do after I've done my real job.
I'm just going to stop you for 1 second. Did you hit your mic or something? Because we're getting a little feedback.
No, I don't even have a mic on me. But are you still hearing something right now?
Yeah, there's a little bit of feedback, but keep going. It may work itself out.
Okay, sounds good. Let me know if it doesn't stop. But yeah, so I studied healthcare in university, got my degrees in health, and went into a career in healthcare, but always loved to write. And I ended up starting a blog, which then turned into editors from newspapers and magazines reading that and inviting me to write for their publications. Grew into a freelance writer, grew into somebody who was invited onto radio shows and television shows because of the things that I wrote. Then, as you mentioned in my bio, started hosting radio shows, started appearing more regularly on national television. And for any of the people who are watching and listening who might not be from Canada, when I mentioned the social, like in the US, I know The View is like the big kind of daytime panel talk show. It's not a direct comparison, and I know the girls at the social hate when we do that, but that's the closest thing to really explain what the social is. So it's a national television show. So my mom just calls me a professional big mouth, basically, because, whether it's writing, radio, television, public speaking, I'm sharing stories that I feel are not often shared and perspectives that I think need to be put out in the world. And then all of that work kind of coalesced into getting a book deal and being able to write my book about possibility and taking some of these aspects of my life and putting them into this book in terms of how I have kind of accessed possibilities throughout different phases of my life as well.
I love that. And we are still getting a little bit of feedback. So
I believe it's my fan. I'm going to turn off my
Okay, fan. Maybe that is what it is. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. It was on earlier, but
it's still happening. So give us just a second, everybody. Hey, this is what happens when you go live.
This is what happens.
You were fine before we came on, and now I'm getting a little feedback. I don't know if you all can hear it as well, but I can. I want to make sure that everything is clear in our conversation. So I tell you what, how about if you go out and come back in?
Sure.
And see if that clears it.
That clears it up. Okay, so I'll leave studio and then I'll come right back.
Yes. Okay. So thank you everybody for your patience. We want to because Bee's got great things to talk about. We want to make sure you can hear her. So thank you. This is a book that I really enjoyed. And again, I want you all to really be able to get the best of it. So we're going to see what happens here. And let me know if I make sure I'm sounding clear as well. You can drop that in the comments just to let us know for sure what's happening. So it'll be just a second and we will get back to it. So I hope everyone is doing well. For those of you who are here, if you don't mind dropping where you're joining us from as well, that would be great, just so we can know who is here and have an opportunity to see how international we are. Okay, let's see. Try again. Say something.
Okay. Hello.
Yep. We good now? That fit whatever it was. That fixed it.
Perfect. I'm gonna just stay still. I won't touch nothing. And I'm glad it's better now. Thank you.
Yes, it's better now. But basically, you were just talking about having this love of writing and then going to school for medicine and being in the medical field and then doing a bunch of things over time, getting involved in public speaking, being on the television show, the social, similar to The View, but not really, and then ultimately getting to this space of writing this beautiful book. So I got it, but I just wanted to make sure it was clear. It's clear for everyone. For everyone. So one thing, I love that life that you have had to this point because you definitely believe in possibilities. Yeah. Because to go from someone who liked to write but went into medicine because I know, your background, your family probably like, you need to get XYZ type of job. And then deciding, hey, I'm going to lean back into those things that I have a gift for, which is storytelling and talking and speaking. I find that pretty powerful that you've done
Thank
that in
you.
your career.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's it's just sometimes I think, what would my life have been like had I studied, say, journalism or English in university and really just went hard with this dream? But I always just feel like things unfold the way they're supposed to, and I was supposed to have I was supposed to gain the skills that I gained, and I was supposed to have the experiences I had, even in different fields, to get to this point. So I don't regret anything anymore.
Right. Right. And I'm with you on that, B, because I can say the same for myself. I went to school for business and done many things in my life. And this is something that I've always wanted to do. And I just decided 5 years ago, I'm going to start doing it. And here we are.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So, yeah, sometimes it's just a thing of taking a chance on yourself and believing in the possibilities.
Exactly. Always.
Yes. Now, one of the things I mentioned to you before we came on, I was talking to my mom about this book. And what I love about it is that it really is a love letter to your daughters.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with a letter to your daughters. It ends with your daughters. But in between, we see your conversations with them interspersed within your own stories. So what was it that really inspired you to want to write this book for your daughters?
Mm. So with them, and with the timing of everything, with where I was in my life, and when the book deal opportunity came to me, it's funny because I was at a place where my professional life was skyrocketing. Everything was amazing. I was out and about, I was writing, I was on television. Like, I was really growing in that phase of my life. But at the same time, my personal life was, horrible, because my marriage was ending and nobody knew.
Mm-hmm.
But I was going through the process of realizing that my marriage was over, and trying to figure out next steps. So it was very much like, I had these dual identities, where in the house I was miserable, depressed, anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Outside the house, I'm me. I'm B. I'm doing the things that I'm here to do, because my career is going amazing, and all of that is just fantastic. And so when it came to a point of me, well, we sold our home, the marital home, and separated. And I remember spending the summer with my mom, and I brought my daughters with me. They were 2 and 5 at the time. And I couldn't see any possibility. That was a time in my life when I've always said I have a really tight connection with possibility, but at that time, that connection was really weak.
Right.
And I couldn't see the possibility for anything better than me just being able to be in my mom's house and sleep in my childhood bedroom. That was the best I could see for myself at the time. But my daughters, all they saw was possibility. All they saw was adventure. All they saw was opportunity for something new and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really the ones who I looked at to kind of refuel myself and my brain and my heart to start strengthening that connection. Because, I didn't hide anything from them about what was happening. I was explaining things to them about the family dynamic in ways that were appropriate for them. But all they saw was possibility. And I was like, oh, I need to be inspired by them. So when I started writing about the book and thinking about possibility, they were a huge model for me. It wasn't so much that I was writing this book as an instructional way for them. It was kind of in honor of them, and them being able to teach me how to regain that connection with possibility, because that's all they saw. Even, when they try new things, when they go to different places, when they're trying something for the first time, they don't see the obstacles. They don't have that voice that says, oh, you can't do it, or here's why it's going to be bad. They don't have that still. And so this book, I started writing it kind of in honor of them, and in honor of the fact that I learned this again from them. And I thought, there's going to come a time in life when they're going to see the obstacles. They're going to have those voices of self-doubt. So I thought, in those moments, this book might be instructional for them. This book might be something that they could look to, and not only hear my voice and read what I'm saying about my own experiences, but hopefully realize that they were actually instrumental in me believing in possibility. So even when the world or when life kind of shakes that, they already innately had that. So I never want them to forget that they have always had that within them. And even when life kind of rattles that a bit, I want this book to just at least be a standing reminder for them that they could always access that because it's always something that's been within them. So.
And that's what I really liked about the book because, yes, your daughters are inspiration for you and looking at their lives and looking at the fact that, in the book and some of the vignettes, they are very different from you in some ways. And, you are able to learn from them because, most parents come into the game thinking they got it all. They know it all, what they say, how they say it, that it always has to be, what they say. And that you are kind of the quote unquote role model for them and how they live. But you say, hey, I'm not a role model. I'm a possibility model. And
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly. That's another piece for me. And that kind of came up as well in one of my first meetings with my editor. And she's fabulous. And she had done her research on me. She had read things that I had written over the years. She really came into our first meeting with like a really solid understanding of who I was and what I was trying to do in the world. And she said to me, "You're such an amazing role model." And I understand what people mean when they say that and the good intentions. But for me, role model has always been a little bit tricky because there's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of expectation. You get put on pedestals that you didn't ask to be put on. And I've had experiences in my life where I've been put on a pedestal. No, I haven't asked to be put there.
Right.
And then I go ahead and I live my life and I make decisions based on what I think is best for me. And all of a sudden, these people who put me on a pedestal say, "Oh, we didn't expect that from you. You've disappointed us," right? And I'm like, well, I didn't ask to be here. I didn't ask to be this role model. So when I said to my editor, I prefer the term possibility model. And she had never heard that before. And I said, I look at it as me being a model of possibility for whatever it is that I'm doing in the world, whether you're looking at me as a young Black woman in Canadian media, which is not very diverse. If you're looking at me as a woman who switched careers entirely, if you're looking at me as a model of somebody who went through a divorce and is, raising 2 young daughters, I'm a model of possibility. I'm not telling you this is the way it needs to go because I don't need that stress. I don't need that.
Right.
I want to offer a model of what it could be because I think a lot of the time, sometimes we don't even know what it could look like. So I want to live as a model of what it could look like. And if that even just inspires somebody to think about what they want it to look like, regardless of the outside noise, then that's what I like. But I don't like the responsibility of being a role model per se.
Oh yeah, because those role models will disappoint you, number one, because they are human.
Exactly.
And, there's something in being seen in that way. It doesn't allow for your humanity.
That's exactly it.
Because the minute you went left and everybody else thought you should have gone right, then that pedestal that they put you on, they are knocking you off of it real quick.
And it's like, listen, I am just, I'm going to slip up. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make decisions that other people may not make, but I'm going to live as authentically as I can. And if that's disappointing, I'm sorry, but it's what I got to do with my own life. So
you got to do it with your own way. I love that the very first quote in this book is from Zora Neale Hurston. It says, you are alive, aren't you? Well, so long as you have no grave, you are covered by the sky, no limit to your possibilities. So I love that. That's a great way that you start this book out with these words of wisdom. So within the book itself, it's broken down into 6 different sections. Because again, you're talking about the road to becoming. So the first thing you talk about is becoming rooted. And I say rooted or grounded.
Yeah.
So in that particular section, what types of lessons are you hoping for us to take away from the book?
Yeah, I think with that section, I really wanted to start thinking for myself and for the reader just about where our foundations are and who we know ourselves to be, because I think that's kind of the first question you have to ask yourself. in order to figure out what possibility might look like for you is to think about, who do you see yourself to be? So I touch on things in that section around culture. So again, as you mentioned, I'm Jamaican Canadian, and I talk about my heritage and my background in different portions of the book. But that was one of the very first things that I knew I wanted to touch on, and how that roots me and how that grounds me. But also thinking about motherhood and thinking about who is as Toni Morrison said. She said in an interview that the version of herself that her kids seemed to want was the version of herself that she liked the best. So she realized she didn't have to change who she was to be the best mom. She just needed to figure out, who do I like in myself the best? That's who my kids gravitate to. So I write a little bit about taking on, hearing that wisdom, and then kind of interpreting that into my own motherhood journey, and thinking about, what type of mom do I want to be? What type of woman am I? Even names. I have an essay about the power of names and the possibility of names, and talking about things from, and I know this is not just like West Indian or Caribbean culture, but the idea of like nicknames, where you'll have somebody that you've known as John your whole life, and they pass away, and you go to the funeral, and the pamphlet says like, in memory of Alfred, and you're like, who's Alfred? We've been calling him John.
Right.
Exactly, right. But even talking about names and talking about my own experiences with my name, and going through divorce, and the question of, are you going to change your name? And thinking about, even with my name, who is my name? Who am I in relation to my name? So the Be Rooted section is just sharing my own stories, but asking questions again of the reader about, in these different aspects, who do you know yourself to be? And what is that best version of yourself?
Right. I love that. 'Cause, I mean, you come out not pulling any punches. The first chapter, know the version of you that you like best.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, just the thought of that, because how many of us are going through life giving off a version of ourselves that are what other people like?
Exactly. And as a recovering people pleaser,
Come on.
that's something that, what's funny about this book too, that I want to share, is that even when I started writing it, when I started, looking at my daughters and thinking about inspiration, I had to kind of start writing this book to gaslight myself a little bit and force myself, to really think about possibility and really look at where in my life right now, as terrible as things are, where's there even the tiniest possibility for something new, something different, something better? And like I said, that section comes from that quote that I mentioned of Toni Morrison, and I write about it in kind of the motherhood aspect. But that was a big question: is, who do I like the best for myself, without thinking of who I'm supposed to be for other people? And when you flip that lens now, and when you start showing up in the world as the version of yourself that you like the best, what different possibilities come out of that? When you're not chasing what you think you're supposed to be, or who you think you're supposed to be, you open up. It's like an invisible door, I imagine it, where, when we're being the people that we think everybody wants us to be, we see the windows, we see the doors. This is the family window. This is the job window. This is the friend window. This is who you're supposed to be when you enter these spaces. But when we start to think about who we think of ourselves, as we like ourselves the best, I imagine it as like this invisible door suddenly appears, and you can go through that door, and there's like a whole new garden, there's a whole jungle, there's creatures, there's a whole new life there, when you decide to show up as the version that you like the best, instead of what you think serves everybody else around you. So I think that's really key for people to think about for themselves first.
Absolutely. And that's what, so you hit it out the gate. I was like, ooh, ooh, ooh. What's that?
I love it.
One of the other things, and it's storming here in Atlanta, so we're gonna pray that we
okay
the next that just started a couple minutes ago. So
Oh
if y'all hear
no.
something, hope we're gonna pray that we get through this.
Exactly. We will be.
Okay, with no more technical difficulties. But a couple other things, one of the other things I do want to talk about in that particular section, because we could go through each section and be here all night. But I love when you talk about you deserve a custom fit.
Ooh.
And you talk about it in the chapter or in the essay, you're talking about a lot as it pertains to work.
Yeah.
But I take that you deserve a custom fit in every area of your life.
Come on, listen. That essay has, like, if I were writing this book today, that essay would take on a much wider scope, because you're right. When we think about a custom fit, like the background of that essay is, I was kind of recruited for this new position, and everybody was saying how amazing I am, and I'm the person they thought of for this position, this new thing that was coming up, this new opportunity, and made me feel like, oh, these interviews are just formalities because we really want you. And as I kind of went through the phases, I realized, okay, I think this is more, this is more serious than just kind of a formality. And it turned out that I was kind of second place, didn't get the position, and went to somebody else. But I realized after that, I think getting the position would have been not necessarily what I wanted for myself, but what I thought was supposed to be the next step for me. So it's like, yes, you need to get that because that is the next step.
Right.
And I realized I was contorting myself a lot. As I learned more about what the opportunity would mean, I was like, oh, okay, so that means, I kind of have to tone this down. I can't really talk so much about this. I'll need to kind of change how I do that. But, at top of my mind, I'm like, that's okay, because that's what I got to do in order to get to this next step. And then, so when I didn't get the position, I was devastated, but it took me, yeah, exactly. But it took me some time to realize that that was not the right fit. And when in a career aspect, when these, entities, these companies, these organizations have the power to look at us mere mortals and decide whether we're a good fit, we can do that too. Like, is this place a good fit for me to be? Is this a place that is proper for me to give my skills and my energy to? And yeah, just thinking about, do I want to be in a place that's going to require me to contort myself? Or do I want to find the right space for myself to just be as I am, right?
Be, right?
That's it. B just needs to be B. But you're right, because that idea of custom fit, we can think about it in relationships. We can think about it in so many different types of relationships, right? So the idea of finding a custom fit for yourself is something that we also really need to kind of interrogate for ourselves and figure out what that looks like.
Yes, and I that is, yeah, that really stood out to me, because thinking about all the times, like, oh, I'll just put on any old garment, any old whatever, just so I can say that I have whatever this is, the job, the relationship, whatever. But is it really a custom fit?
No, you're squeezing yourself into something. The shoe is pinching. It's like, do we need the shoe to pinch, or do we just need to find the shoe that fits properly?
Absolutely. I remember years ago somebody said, trying to put that square peg in that round hole. Like,
exactly. No. Can't do it.
No. So the next section, you talk about becoming bold.
Mm-hmm.
So for the boldness, how did that really resonate with you as something that you wanted to include?
Yeah. So that was another piece where I really needed to remember what boldness was. Just being in a space, and all of this is kind of background. I don't really talk at all about the details of the end of my marriage or anything in the book, but just thinking about my writing process as I was coming up with these things, I was afraid. I was very afraid. I was very anxious. I was very worried. The only boldness I had at that time was, especially being in the Canadian media landscape, we had that racial reckoning where people
Mhm.
realize, in 2020 and things that, okay, we got to pay attention to Black people. So that that opened some different doors and opened some ears and eyes that did not want to hear anything I had to say prior, but all of a sudden things changed. So I was able to kind of exercise my boldness in being able to speak up about injustices that were happening and things that were happening to other people and things that were happening or experiences that we were having as Black people as a collective. But outside of that, I did not feel bold within myself. And I almost felt like a fraud that, people would be like,
Mm.
oh my goodness, you're writing these things, you're talking about these things, we need your voice, you're really doing so much. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm doing it. But then I feel like a fraud because I'm like, I go home and I'm just crying because I'm so afraid of, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I don't know if I've made a wrong decision. I don't know what I've done with my life. And so I really needed to have a reminder of boldness and just thinking about in different aspects of my life. So thinking about imposter syndrome, thinking about boundaries and boundary setting, and how even though restrictions might seem like you're closing yourself off to things, restrictions actually help you to know what you don't want in your
Right.
space, so you can stand on that and be bold in saying, no, this is not for me. I'm trying to go over here, so I can't waste time here.
No.
So just thinking about some of those different aspects to it, I really needed to remind myself about how I could be bold and how I have overcome things to be more bold. And so that section really developed a lot out of that for sure.
Oh, yes. And I love this section as well. There are several things that you talk about. One, that you mentioned what possibilities look like when we reject humility.
Yes. That was a big one for me to dive into. And that essay took on a lot of different forms because I started, there were so many different ways that I wanted to go with that. But I had to really sit with this idea of humility and what does humility really mean, and what is the performance of humility, and
Mhm.
what are people actually looking for when they say, oh, you should be humble? What do people mean by that, right? And I use a story that Bee Winans told at Maya Angelou's homegoing, where, long story short, they were going to perform somewhere. I can't remember if it was for Bill Clinton or something.
Yes.
In the airport, right? Yeah. So he was in the airport. His driver hadn't come for him. Maya Angelou shows up. She tells him, "Just come with me." And this is his first meeting. He's very, nervous about being in a car ride with her. And she spends the car ride talking to him about how much she really respects his family and she enjoys what they do and all of that. And somehow the idea of humility comes up and being humble. And she says, humble is nothing. Humble is like a G-string on a stripper. You shake it real hard, it's going to fall off. And she goes, people will, you compliment somebody and they say, oh no, not me. And they say it's just God. And she's like, that is not what it's about. You have to own what God has given you. You don't small up yourself and be like, oh, it's not really me. No, God gave that to you, but you're supposed to stand up and say, yes, God gave this to me.
Right.
So thinking about that, and then thinking about my position kind of in the world, with especially being forward facing in media and always being told and given this idea that you're supposed to be humble. You're just supposed to be grateful to be in the room. If somebody grants you an opportunity, you're just supposed to be so thankful. And I realized that's a performance that doesn't serve me, and it doesn't serve the other person in kind of evolving beyond what's the status quo of who's supposed to be in the spaces and who's not. Because if you look at me as a young Black woman and say, oh, we don't usually have people like you here, but we're going to bring you in. You should be humble. You should be humble that we have brought you into this space. If I go along with that performance, that just satisfies their idea that I don't belong. So for me, it's
That's
like,
right.
how do we shake that? And then again, what possibilities come from that? Because now we have changed what the status quo is. We've changed the performance, and that may be uncomfortable for people. Sometimes when you don't perform humility, you're arrogant, you're this,
Right.
that, and you aren't really. You've just made the other party uncomfortable because now you stepped out of the performance that they've expected. So,
Mm.
yeah, so thinking about humility and thinking about the performance of humility is something that I think opens some different doors for us too when we start to think about what that actually looks like in action.
It definitely is a difference, like, oh, thank you so much. I was just happy to be here.
Exactly. It's like, who does that help? What does that do for anybody?
And especially, I'm gonna just call it what it is. As Black women, as we're stepping into these spaces, we probably have more than the people who gave us the opportunity.
That's exactly it. And if we just keep performing, nothing changes. Nothing changes. So yeah, so we got to shake it out.
Yeah, in that section, you also talk about knowing your worth, which again applies to getting your paper,
Exactly.
but also it can apply to other areas of your life. Knowing your worth, and your worthiness, and then being your own cheerleader.
Yes. So again, kind of thinking about interrogating this idea of being arrogant and what that means, and how do we restrict ourselves when we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to celebrate ourselves for fear of being seen as big-headed and arrogant, and that's something that I've actually struggled with. And some I talk about in therapy with my therapist. She's trying to get that out of me, but I have this I'm just very cognizant of I hate being misunderstood. So I think that is my number one thing. I hate being misunderstood. And I would hate somebody to think that I am an arrogant person. But what my therapist has helped me to realize is that when I don't kind of step into who I am and embrace all of who I am, it creates a real dissonance between who I see myself to be and who other people see me to be. And not saying that I need to, be living to satisfy what other people see of me, but she goes, if you're seeing yourself as smaller than everybody else, that's a problem. That is a problem. And so thinking about being my own cheerleader and taking that to the reader as well and kind of encouraging the reader, it's like, we have to be our first celebrant, our first cheerleader, especially when you're doing something where you don't know where you're going to get that support from. You don't know if anybody else is going to get it. You don't know if anybody is going to understand how important some of these accomplishments are to you.
Right.
We're always waiting for that external validation. We may not get it, or we may not get it the way we wanted to get it.
Right.
And then that leads us to disappointment. So I think that section is really just to encourage us to think about rejecting this idea of you're arrogant if you celebrate yourself, you're arrogant if you own your gifts, and if you own your accomplishments. If we can let go of that and realize that we're actually being supportive of ourselves when we do that, right? We need to be able to do that for ourselves. And that helps us to change the way we see ourselves, the way we see our place in the world. And I think once we start to do that, it changes how we progress. Because if we continue to find ways to celebrate ourselves, not saying it's going to make the road easier, but you're on this journey, and you know that you understand what you're trying to do, and you're going to celebrate yourself when you get these baby step accomplishments, and you're going to celebrate when you get the big accomplishments. And everybody else can catch up, but you are going to celebrate yourself regardless. So we really need to do that without thinking of that outside idea of I'm going to be seen a certain way and I can't, no, we need to let that go. That doesn't help us at all.
Absolutely. And Patricia is saying we don't cheer ourselves along enough. No, we don't.
We do not.
And a lot of times what happens is once we do it, and we might be like, yay, me. And then we're on to the next thing so quickly that we don't even
sit with it. And I'm really bad at that. I'm really bad at not taking a moment to have some recognition. And I've had to force myself to remember the you 2 years ago, the you 5 years ago, the you even 2 months ago was waiting to get here.
Right.
And now you're here and you're like, okay, that's cool, but now I got to go to the next thing. No. Now you're doing a disservice to the you who couldn't imagine what it was going to feel like to get to this point. And now you want to rush through it? It's like, no. We have to sit with these moments and sit with these accomplishments and really, just celebrate ourselves for what we do, because life is hard. Life is hard. So we got to do it.
Yes. So in our next section, we talk about becoming connected, which is a lot. It does have to do with, people in our lives and, how we connect with the people in our lives. Now, there's there's several, because I love this whole book, but in this particular one, you start out again, hitting it kind of hard. Listen to the ones who love you. Mm-hmm. Now, what I thought it was going to be when I read the title and what you're actually talking about is something different.
Yes. So learn to listen to the ones you love.
Right. Yeah. You have to listen to the ones you love. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, but you got the gist of it. That one was me thinking a little bit differently about, how do we treat people, right? So we're often taught, treat people the way you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. And that's the golden rule. And I'm not saying that the golden rule needs to go out in the trash, but I am saying in this section, we may need to think about the platinum rule, which is treat people the way they want to be treated. Because the way I might want to be treated may not be satisfactory for somebody else. So if I just do what I would want, I still might not be meeting my friend, my daughter, my partner. I might not be meeting them where they need me to meet them.
Right.
And so I kind of talk a little bit about how this idea of treating people the way they want to be treated requires us as the potential giver of treatment and care. It requires us to let go of our ego, which is hard for us to do. It requires us to let go of the way we see the world, because we are talking about treating somebody the way they want to be treated, who may see the world a completely different way from us. Right. So it requires us to do a lot of that hard work of, let me not center myself in how I'm going to move forward to help this person. I think it's a good baseline, because the idea is, when you treat people the way you want to be treated, we're treating them with the utmost care. We're treating them with the utmost respect. But like I said earlier, sometimes that's just not meeting them in the moment. And I think we can all think about examples in our own lives where maybe we've been going through a tough time. Maybe we've needed some type of support, big or small. And, for instance, my mother is very good at this. If I call with an issue, she's very much a fixer. She very much wants to get to the solution. And sometimes I just want to vent. So we had this conversation where I say to her, I have to preface the conversations now by saying, listen, I'm just going to vent. Don't need you to fix it. Don't need you to say, did you try this? Did you do this? You should do this. Right. You should do that. But the reason why she does that is because she knows that if it was her, she would want somebody to help her find a solution. So she's treating me the way she would want to be treated, but that's not meeting me where I need her to meet me. Right. So that piece is really just kind of getting us to think about it from a little bit of a different lens. And then what does that require? It requires us to, again, let go of ego, decenter ourselves in the way we view the world, and trust that the person that we are here to support, trust that they know what they need.
They know what they need.
We have to trust that, right? We have to trust that. So it requires a little bit of extra work in order to think of it this other way. But when we learn to listen to them, then we can meet them the best way that they need us to meet them. And then that brings a whole range of new things within the relationship.
Yes, more possibilities. I love that. Yeah, because then you're not getting frustrated with that person because they're like, ah.
That's the thing, right? It's like, no, I didn't want you to do that, or like, no.
Right, exactly. I do want to talk about relishing the good fortune of sisterhood.
Hmm.
Because this is the Brown Girl Collective. This is a
Exactly.
space for Black women, to come together and get good information like what you're sharing. Talk about books, Kiki, whatever it is we do in this space. But
Exactly.
it is all about sisterhood, really, at
100%.
its core. And
100%.
so I love that chapter. That it's good fortune to have sisterhood.
It is very good fortune, and that's something that I have watched develop with my daughters in a way that was very different from me growing up. Just the small city that I grew up in wasn't very diverse. So I was often the only Black kid in the class, the only Black kid in the grade. But watching my daughters, who living in the Toronto area, extremely diverse. So they've got friends of all different backgrounds, but they have their little, like, they got their little Black girlfriends, and it heals a little part of me that,
Mm.
like, I always say, when I talk about this, it was never an issue of me growing up not wanting to be Black, or me not being cognizant of my Blackness, or me not loving my Blackness. I always did. I just didn't have a lot of people to share it with outside of
Right,
my
right,
family. But
right.
I watch my daughters, and I talk about it in that section where it's like, it would be like a Monday, and I'm walking them to school, and we get onto the schoolyard, and two of her little friends got fresh braids over the weekend. So they're all running up to talk about the braids and the beads and how much they love each other's hair. And then my other little one talking about just like common foods that we eat and that we drink in like West Indian culture, and just seeing them have these normal conversations that for me would have been weird. It would have been weird for me to talk about these things, and I didn't really have anybody to talk about them with
Right.
on the
Right.
schoolyard. So just knowing that they're able to relish in what sisterhood looks like as little Black girls who are going to grow into Black women, they've got this rooted in them so early, and just relishing, as I say, in that good fortune of
Mhm.
having sisters around you who understand a certain way of life that you share, who understand certain experiences and certain struggles. There's nothing that can compare to that. So it was just that just was such a feel good piece to write, and just really just feeling all the good feels that I feel as an adult now, but also looking at my daughters and realizing how good they've got it too. So
Yes, and that is definitely a blessing when you can find find your community and find it, at a young stage,
100%.
and let that carry throughout your life, whether it's the same people or not, but you've had that
Exactly.
experience, so kind of what to
How
look
it
for as
feels.
you're going forward. So I
Exactly.
love that.
Exactly.
In our next section, we talk about being open,
Hmm.
and let me see. One of the things that I really loved in there is there is more than enough of what you want and need.
Yes. Yes. Abundance. We have to think abundance versus lack. And this is something that it's a lesson that I keep relearning myself.
Mhm.
I started really feeling it. I remember when I was on mat leave after having my first daughter, and feeling like, oh no, if I take time out of, doing all my media stuff, I'm going to lose my spot. Somebody's going to come in, and they're going to have all of the right things to say, and they're going to be the better writer, and they're going to be this and that. And everybody's going to forget about me. And I'm just going to be this washed up lady now who's got a baby, and that's
Mm.
it. Right. So that was kind of one aspect of where that came up. And then again, talking about, things that happened after George Floyd's murder, and this racial reckoning that was happening around the world, and all of a sudden people are getting different opportunities, and people are listening that never listened before, and people are throwing money at things they've never thrown money at before. And now it's like, okay, where's my opportunity? Where do I get to kind of fit in and do what I feel is needed in this moment? And feeling like there's just like a little tiny pie, and we got to find out how to get our small piece of it. So there's
Mhm.
been different aspects of that for me throughout my life and experiences. um, but writing about this is just a reminder that the world is way more expansive than we give it credit for. Way more expansive than our small little vision of what we think is available to us. And just really encouraging the reader to look for abundance, look for the things that prove abundance exists. You don't need to worry about the things that show you lack, because there are more things that are showing you abundance if you pay attention. So if we're able to focus on that instead of the, the big red flashing lights that's telling you time's running out, or you're not going to get the opportunity, or somebody's going to take something from you, we can ignore that, and we can look for the signs that are telling us, no, abundance is in existence and it's all around you. So move with that idea that life is unfolding as it should, but life is unfolding with this idea that there is more than enough. So if this door closes, that doesn't mean that's the end. That means there's 2 other doors over here that you just haven't gotten to yet.
I know that's right. I know that's right.
Some of this book, I've come back to it myself, and I've been like, I can't believe I've fallen so far off the track that I need to go back to this book to remember that I did say the better way to be, or the better way to think, because it's natural. Life has ebbs and flows, and sometimes you need those reminders. So that's just a big reminder I know I'm going to return to as well, for sure.
Yes. I have to bring up also in this section, you talk about what if, and like that what if question, because I've had conversations with people that may not have tried different things, haven't considered the possibilities, because their what if is always based upon something negative happening.
Exactly. The worst case scenario. When you're what if you think about how you answer that question, when you find yourself, you kind of hit a wall and you got to think about what if. I had to be honest with myself and realize that my what ifs were always like, what if the worst thing happens? What if this all falls apart? And, they think about hope for the best, but plan for the worst, right? That's the saying. I do that a little too much. I kind of look for the worst, and I try to get ahead of the worst because I assume the worst is what's coming. But all I can hope for is to just get ahead of it, so when it hits me, it doesn't hit me so hard.
Right.
So we have to really rethink that. And life has shown me, in the moments where I have said, what if the worst thing happens? Usually what happens is something better than what I would have even thought was the best will happen. And then I'm not prepared for that happening. I'm not prepared for when the good thing happens, or when the best outcome happens, because I've been focusing so much on what happens if it all goes wrong, and just trying to get ahead of it going wrong, that now I'm unprepared when it actually goes well. And then I'm scrambling and I don't know what to do. And I'm, the spotlight's on me and I don't know what to say because I didn't prepare for this.
Right.
So it's saying to us that it's, and I know for myself, it's it's a protection thing. It's a trauma thing. It's all these things where it's like, I just need to insulate myself, so when the hit comes, I can take the hit. But I talk to myself a lot, and I have to tell myself, like, girl, remember when this thing was going on and you thought it was going to go this way, and you were prepared for it to go the wrong way. It always went the right way, or at least not the wrong way. It always went some other way. The worst thing that you thought could happen has never happened. So you spend all your what ifs on the absolute worst possible scenario, and you have no evidence to show that that's what you should expect out of life. You have evidence to show that you should expect that it will go a better way, but you don't trust that evidence. So listen, I'm in here talking to myself a lot, trying to do therapy.
Hey, and I get it, because when I read that, I'm just like, wow. To me, a lot of it is like thinking about, people oftentimes will talk about fear of failure.
Right.
A lot of people have fear of success. That's really what it is. But they say it's failure, but really it's success.
It's really the fear of success, because then I think a lot of us are used to being able to kind of commiserate around things that go wrong. Again, thinking back to this idea of arrogance and being your own cheerleader and stuff like that, it's always easier to find people who are complaining about something than to find people who are celebrating and cheering. When you think about like customer service, I used to work retail. If something goes wrong, if a customer is upset, they're going to let you know they're upset. If they had a good opportunity, they're going to know in their mind they had a good opportunity, but they're not going to say anything, right? But we will share and speak our voice when something goes wrong. And I think just kind of human nature in this way has set us up where we want to say it's the fear of failure, right? And we're trying to avoid failure, but really we're actually more comfortable with discussing failure than we are discussing success, right? We're more comfortable talking about failure because I think sometimes for some of us, if we talk about success, okay, now you're out of touch. Now you are bragging. Now you are being arrogant. But when, like I said, when the evidence points to the worst possible thing actually not happening, we are doing ourselves a disservice by not being prepared for the good. So we need to flip that switch of the what if and think about it differently so we can prepare ourselves, so we can meet the moment when it shows up for us, right? So
I love that. And we are going to go a couple minutes over, B, so forgive me.
Listen, this has flown so, like,
I had such a good time. I told you what it was going to be before we came on, right?
I love it. I love it.
So in our next section of the book, we talk about being strong and what that means to be strong. And it's not necessarily, you know, this whole strong Black woman trope that we hear. That's not what you're talking about.
No. With this, this section is just really about just building up our own, and I'm going to say resilience, but I have an essay in here about resilience and my issues with resilience, but just building up our own fortitude to meet life as it finds us, right? And thinking about things like dealing with grief, thinking about things like I said, with resilience, that's actually something that I do a lot of public speaking on as well, where we often, and I say we being kind of society, has this over reliance on resilience that feeds into the strong Black woman trope, right? Which feeds into the adultification of young Black girls, which feeds into Black children, even in preschool, having higher rates of punishment and detention, because we are seen as, you're supposed to be able to deal with harder things. You're supposed to be more mature. You're supposed to be stronger than your peers. We deal with that from a very young age, and it just keeps going with us. And for me, when I think about resilience, I think about the power of resilience and it being a muscle that I need to have and that I need to have strong, but something that I don't want the outside world to have an over-reliance on, because then it turns into a very individualistic thing where now the outside world just gets to judge, how resilient am I? When something happens, you're not looking at the thing I have to build resilience against. You're looking at how well I manage it. And if I don't manage it to your level of, you know, what is a good level of managing, then I'm weak. Then I have failed if I'm not managing. But we're not looking at the thing we have to build resilience against. And so I think for me, when it comes to that, strength is also knowing when to push back. Strength is knowing when to say, I'm not going to carry this weight. Like, it's not that I can't carry it, but I know that that's not my weight to carry. Right. So it's just thinking about strength in terms of a healthy relationship with strength, a healthy relationship with resilience, a healthy way, a relationship with moving through difficult times, but not this kind of superhuman thing that doesn't allow us, again, as you said before, it doesn't allow us our full humanity, right? A strength that doesn't allow us our full humanity is a harm. That's a harm. Right? It is a harm. Yeah. So it's just thinking about, how do we have a healthy relationship with this, and how do we kind of claim our space in the world to be able to push back and have the strength to push back when we need to push back in those moments as well. So that whole section really touches on a lot of those pieces.
It definitely does. And yes, I love the way you talk about that. Our pitfalls and power and resilience. That was one of the things I had written down. So,
Yes, yes.
but yes, there's truth in that. But one of the other things in there I love that you talk about is how we think about letting go of the things that no longer serve us. There's a level of strength that's required in that.
Very much so. Very much so. Because often the things that we are carrying that no longer serve us are things that we are carrying because we think we're supposed to, or we're carrying it for somebody else. But it's not actually doing anything for us anymore. And sometimes we have an attachment to this thing that even though it's not serving us, we don't really know what's going to happen if we let it go because we're just so used to having it with us. So just being able to have the strength to really sit with things and take an assessment of your life and see what is actually serving you, whether that's the type of, sorry, I just got a pop up. See all these computers just do stuff. So
They
my
do
computer
stuff.
just anyway, yeah, just thinking about having the strength to really assess our own lives and know what we need to leave, what has served its time with us, what has done what it can do for us, and now it can't really do anything more, so you've served your purpose. Or the things that maybe weren't serving us in the first place, but we just felt like we needed to have it around, whether that's a thing or a person, and being able to say, you can move to the left because this is no longer serving me. And really, I think the key thing with that too is looking to the future, looking beyond the letting go with anticipation and not fear. With looking forward to, whoa, okay, now what have I made space for?
Right.
Like I think about this sometimes, even with my closet. Sometimes my sister is a stylist, and so she'll be on me about, you got stuff just in your closet that you don't wear, you need to purge, you need to do this, you need to do that. I get it. And I'll have an attachment to things sometimes where I'm like, I know I haven't worn this dress in 3 years, but what if the opportunity comes up and, I don't want to let it go. And I, even with that, I've had to really just kind of close my eyes and plug my ears and get rid of the stuff that I don't need anymore. And instead of kind of mourning what's lost, I thank what was for what it's done for me. And then I'm like, wow, what's next? Now, when we're talking about possibility, we've opened up a whole new possibility. Sometimes my bank account doesn't like what I've opened up because that means I'm going to go buy a whole bunch more new clothes.
Right.
The opportunity and the possibility for something new, we've created space for that. So I think with that piece, it's really just about, let's let go of what has served its purpose and let's make room for something new to come into our lives and take us to whatever the next step is or whatever that next experience is.
Absolutely. And all of these lessons, even though in the book you may talk about a certain aspect of life, but you just take the lesson and it can flow in a lot of different ways, just depending on what you're thinking about. And in our very last section of the book, you talk about becoming inspired and what it means to find inspiration.
Yes. Because I feel like that was a good place to wrap up the book. Is, we've thought about who we know ourselves to be, how do we kind of access our boldness and our strength, and how do we connect to other people? And then it's kind of like, okay, where do you take this from? How do you continue to grow with this idea of possibility? And just thinking about opening up our eyes to just the world and being inspired by the possibilities that exist in front of us, right? And thinking about things like new beginnings, thinking about travel, thinking about ways that we look at the world, and allowing ourselves to take in whatever it is that we're receiving and using that to kind of fuel us to something new. So being inspired by whatever's around us and using that to spark something, I think was the key for that whole section, for sure.
Right. And to be honest, I can't remember if this particular concept was in this section or maybe someplace else, but it stood out to me because you're talking about embracing the senses. And my mother and I were just having that conversation like
Yes,
last week,
yes,
talking
yes,
about, sit and have a meal where you really, enjoy the taste, you enjoy the smell, you put on something that makes you feel good on
yes,
your body, you listen to something, things like that. And to me, those things bring about inspiration because
100.
it allows you to look at the world in a different way when you really take the time and slow down and do things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, that was a piece around pleasure,
Mhm.
So I remember writing that one and thinking about, you know, out of my separation and divorce and going on kind of like my first girls trip, and my girls are like, we went to Barbados and they were like, girl, the men in Barbados, they're gonna be on you and you're gonna have fun. And I was just like, I don't think that part of my body works anymore. I think that's like the batteries are out, the electricity is not connected, like that. I just don't see that, and I just don't see myself as an attractive person in that moment. I just did not see that. And I write about in that section, as you're saying, talking about how I was able to kind of pull myself out of that, not with somebody else, not with being desired by somebody else, but by actually sitting with myself and having true sensual moments in terms of indulging my senses. Just taking that moment to get out of my head and into my body and think about, what am I looking at that's beautiful? What music am I listening to that makes me feel good? Like you said, what am I eating and drinking that is just, sumptuous and delicious? What I'm taking a shower and I'm using like my good, body scrub, and I'm coming out using my good body butter. I'm putting on like a nice little robe. Like, what am I doing to indulge my senses, to remember that I am a person who's not just doing and who is not just here to be assessed on some desirability scale by other people. I am somebody who has these senses that I can entice myself, right? And being able to do that, that that practice opened up a whole new world for me in terms of just thinking about myself as a person, thinking about pleasure, thinking about desire, thinking about all those different things. So it's definitely a source of inspiration for sure to tune into yourself and then see how that helps you look at the world a little bit differently as well.
Definitely so. I love that. And well, we don't have to talk about all of these just because I'm being cognizant of time. But in that section, you also talk about increasing the fun quotient in your life. And that's a big thing because for those of you who saw at the very beginning of the little intro to this, the very last thing in there is joy of living. And that's in fun, travel, all those sorts of things that allow you to have more fun. But the two things I do want to talk about, and it kind of leans back to your inspiration from your daughters,
Yeah.
is that when it comes to beauty, as Black women specifically, we are mirrors for each other.
Yes, yes, yes. Let me flip to that one because that was another one that was really important for me to write. And again, thinking about my daughters, just with being able to help them to always just keep that love of self, that love of their natural beauty, their Black beauty, their beauty as Black girls and Black women. Part of it was inspired. I don't really talk about it in the essay, but I was thinking about it when I wrote this piece, was that a couple years prior, I wrote an op-ed, I think for Refinery 29, and I can't remember what had happened kind of in the media, but there was a lot of conversation amongst mothers on social media about not praising their daughters for being beautiful, right? Praising their daughters for being smart, for being funny, for being strong, good athletes, good at math. But mothers were patting themselves on the back for saying, I never compliment my daughter on her beauty. And one thing that I noticed was common with the majority of these women was that they were white mothers. And I said, as a Black mother, oh, I'm telling my daughters they're smart, they're funny, they're all this, and they're beautiful. Because unlike other people's daughters, the world is telling my daughters that they are not beautiful. The world is finding different ways to get them to be self-conscious or get them to change how they look. So I'm definitely going to tell my daughters they're beautiful. So this piece is about the ways that I have thought about my own beauty, knowing that I'm a mirror for them. I'm their first model of Black womanhood. So what is it that I'm presenting to them, right? And obviously hair is a big part of that. So talking about, even though I've been wearing my hair natural since before they were born, but sometimes I'll press it out, get my straight hair,
Mm-hmm.
braid it up, do different things. And as they've gotten older, I notice how they kind of watch me when I do different things. And I see that they're watching me and how I present myself in certain places.
Okay.
And I know that it's teaching them, okay, so is this how I'm supposed to show up? So for instance, I might talk about this in here, I'm not sure, but thinking about, like, yes, I do talk about it, thinking about, going to a formal event or going to a job interview and saying, okay, now I got to press my hair out. I got to wear it straight because it's this type of thing. And realizing that they're paying attention to, oh, mom says she can't wear her hair like this when she does that. And realizing that they're picking up these lessons. And so shifting that in myself so I can give them a different model of possibility again about how they can show up in the world. And just even the way I speak to them while washing their hair. I mean, my older daughter has locks now, but washing their hair, detangling, it's never, oh, your hair's so tough. It's, oh, mommy pulled too hard. Oh, mommy needs to put some more conditioner in. It's never that something's wrong with their hair.
Right.
I take it on the chin and say, it's something I did wrong that is making this feel uncomfortable for you, instead of making them feel like there's something innately wrong with the way that they show up in the world. And yeah, so that's just thinking about how we become these mirrors for each other. Even grown women, I'm talking about daughters, but even grown woman to grown woman, how are we mirrors for each other, and how do we kind of free each other by showing each other the different ways that we can kind of really indulge in our beauty, and the different ways that looks like for us. So that was really for me.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, as soon as we came on, I think I barely said your name. I was like, hey, beautiful. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's what we do.
That's what we do. And for those who don't, try it.
Exactly. It will change your life. It will change your life. You give a random woman on the street a compliment, it changes everybody's life.
Acknowledge your sisters when they're looking good. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. And last but not least, and actually this kind of ties into something you already said. Why would you not love yourself? I love that.
Yes. And that again was a lesson from my daughters. We were watching a little show as they were getting ready for school, and it was like a animated show that had different songs and things like that, and just catchy stuff for the kids to sing. And there was some song that was, if you love yourself, clap your hands. If you love this about yourself, clap your hands, say this, and, do that, make noise. And they were doing it. They're, if you love yourself, clap your hands, shout hooray, do whatever. They're doing it. And I remember in that moment, I was just busy. I was tidying up the kitchen. I was getting the lunches out. I was like, okay, gotta do this, gotta do that, gotta watch the time because I gotta drop them and get back to work. And so I kind of just said, oh, you guys really love it. You love yourselves, don't you? Because they were clapping and doing all of that. And both of them kind of looked at me like, duh, like, of course, like, why not?
I love it.
Why would we not? Right. And I remember that moment really made me kind of pause and think about not questioning the fact that they loved themselves that way and saw that as just like a silly question to bring up, but made me reflect on, like, do I love myself? How am I loving myself? How am I showing love to myself? Because all I remember in that moment, I was just being very critical of myself. I got up too late. I didn't make the right lunches. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And I'm doing all of that silently in my head while they are on the couch clapping with waffles in their mouth because they love themselves, and just thinking like, of course I love myself. So that was another reminder that they gave me of, like, I need to feel that assuredness of, like, of course, right? That's not even a question. I love myself, of course. But then how do I show myself that? Once I have said it, how do I show myself that? and just remembering that in that moment too.
And all of that is so good. And that's not necessarily the end of the book, but that I wanted to end there because I just thought that that was really powerful. That your girls were like, why wouldn't I?
I felt so silly.
I love this about myself. I love this about myself. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Listen,
okay.
I felt so silly. I was like, forget mommy even said anything because y'all just y'all
Right.
said it. So yes.
Right. And I mean, that's just so important and powerful because a lot of people be like, oh, I love myself, but they don't necessarily mean it. They say
Exactly.
it because they feel like it's that thing that you're supposed to say.
Exactly. And I never want them to start to fall into that, yeah, I'm supposed to say I love myself thing. I want to keep infusing them with things that so that this idea of loving themselves is just always like a of course, and here's why I
Mm-hmm.
love myself. I
Mm-hmm.
always want them to be able to follow that up, right? With
Yeah.
their evidence. So
Yes,
yeah.
I'm gonna use your girls, take your girls' example, and I'm gonna get myself a piece of paper like I love Marcy, and these
Because
are all the reasons why.
all down, write it
Write
all,
it down and put it somewhere on a mirror or whatever, or
do
on a
it,
post-it or on a note on my phone. So when I
and look
have
at
one of
it,
those days, one of those moments,
and you can
that I
pull
can be like, wait a doggone minute.
like, no. Like I know who I am and I love myself, and here is the evidence why. Here is what it is.
Right,
We
right.
need that. We need that for ourselves for sure.
Right. And because of that, I have all these possibilities taking it all around.
Yeah.
Oh, taking it back. See what I did there?
I
But
love
yes. But B, I really, as I said, we went over time. So forgive y'all who are watching. Sorry, not sorry. But
it.
this was such a good conversation, B. And I'm really glad that I found you. Don't even know how on social media, whatever. I
I
heard
love
about this book and I was like, yo, we gotta have a conversation because this is just
Thank
really
you.
good stuff. And we only hit on some of it. We didn't even talk about
Yes, there's so
everything
much
that's in
more.
here.
Yes.
There are like some little exercises and things that you can
Yeah,
do as well, but a lot of them, some of them are like really short, like maybe, a page long, some are longer, some of the
exactly.
essays, but it's just really things for us to think about
Yeah,
as we consider what possibilities are for ourselves.
that's it.
And I will say this, one of the reasons why I started Brown Girl Collective was to really be about sharing possibilities. And
I
a
love
lot of that initially was like a lot of history and things like that of great Black women who are doing these things, because a lot of times you don't know what's available to you if you've never seen anybody doing it.
that.
And
Exactly.
sometimes, like you, yes, you might say you're not a role model, but
Yeah,
but you are a possibility model for
exactly.
someone. I'm a
Exactly.
possibility model for
You
someone,
are definitely.
just to see some people doing things. So that's what it's about. And so for those who've been around for a long time, I haven't been doing that, but it's coming back soon and very soon, because I just think it's really powerful for us to share stories of like real women throughout
Yeah,
history who, past history, current history, who are doing these really wonderful things in the world. So look for that coming soon.
I love that.
So B, I know that the book is relatively new. So
Yeah.
are you still out doing some, promotional type things or anything like that? I know you're based in Canada, but are there places that people might be able to come and meet you, or get a book signed, or other things that you might have going on?
Yeah, so I've got a couple things happening through the Greater Toronto area coming up over the next couple of months. So, an event that I'm really excited about that I kind of conceptualize myself is called Pilates and Possibilities. So,
Mm.
I talk about Pilates in the book. I absolutely love Pilates, and I've planned a series of events where get women together, uh, do a Pilates class, and then I do a reading and kind of a book signing and talk a little bit about the book and all those things. So I have a couple of those set up throughout the summer. I'm planning something for the Atlanta area, so
Woo, uh-oh, uh-oh.
it's not finalized just yet, but planning something for the Atlanta area, hopefully very soon. So looking to work out in that. Hopefully Jamaica as well. I'm in some talks to do some things down there. If we got anybody tuning in from Yard, so different things are on the way, but if people keep up with me on my website, my socials, you will get all the scoop when everything is available. So for sure.
Okay, well, I'm excited about Atlanta, and we can talk about it a little bit before we hang up.
Yes,
Not from you guys. We're gonna hang up from you soon, but
exactly, and we will.
Because actually, the founder of Black Girl Pilates is based in Atlanta, and she's my sorority sister. So,
okay. So yeah, we need to.
We got to have a little combo about that.
We do.
And actually, one of my other sorors.
I love it.
I love Pilates. It's my exercise of choice. Let me know when you come to Atlanta. So yeah, we'll be ready for you.
I love it. I love it.
Oh man, we will definitely be ready for you. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, for staying a little longer than normal, but I feel like it's worth it. Hey, if y'all can sit and listen to Shannon Sharp for 3 hours, y'all can sit and listen to us for an hour and 20 minutes.
That's real.
I'm just saying. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Bee. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you in Atlanta and just all the wonderful things that you've got going on. So please go grab a sip of water, but don't hang up because we have to have that other conversation. Yes, but I'm going to announce next week's guest, who you may be familiar with, and she was doing some things around the time of the pandemic as well that many of y'all may be familiar with. So just hold on one second, Bee. I'll see you in a moment, and thank you again. All right. Now, next week, I am excited to have another great guest, Kimberly Jones. Now, you may be familiar with Kimberly Jones. Her book actually has been out for a while. Her book is How We Can Win. She's written some other things as well, but you may have become familiar with her during the pandemic, during the George Floyd, everything that happened around George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and I can't remember the last name, but forgive me for that. Count it to my head, not to my heart. But during that season of reckoning, she had a video that went viral where she basically said, excuse me, you should be glad that all we want is equality and not revenge. That's Kimberly Jones. And she will be with us next week to talk about how we can win, race, history, and changing the money game that's rigged. So be on the lookout for that next week, a week from today. And that's all I've got for now. So thank you again for being here for this wonderful conversation with Bee, and continue to stay tapped in, tuned in for all of the wonderful people that we have coming next week and beyond. So have a good night or good morning, good afternoon, depending on when you're watching and where you're watching from. And we'll see you again real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.